Hey everyone, welcome to Reviews with Ryan. So we have another video for you guys today. We're going to be reviewing A Man Called Otto, starring Tom Hanks. I'll go ahead and read the plot. So the plot is Otto is a grump who's given up on life following the loss of his wife and wants to end it all. When a young family moves in nearby, he meets his match in quick-witted Marisol, leading to a friendship that will turn his world around, and it is directed by Mark Foster. He's done World War Z, Machine Gun Preacher, Christopher Robin, just to name a few. So, thoughts, Austin? What do you think?
Some of the good thoughts that I will say that this movie portrayed was the acting was strong. I feel like Tom Hanks did a phenomenal job as an actor. The lead and supporting characters, they also did a good job as supporting actors as well. Another good thing that I would really say that I enjoyed was the comedy. It genuinely was a funny movie, and it did have times where, there were some hilarious scenes, and, he really is a good portrayal of this man being a true grump. And those are some of the good things that I would say.
Yeah, I would say the comedy was pretty good. Honestly, I didn't expect it to have as much comedy as it did. I think it was kind of weird because our audience was mainly senior citizens and nobody was laughing. We were like the only ones laughing in the theater, which is kind of weird. I think there was only like one emotional part where we heard somebody maybe crying at one point.
Right. It definitely seemed like that particular audience was not really having too much of the humor, even though their humor was, I would say that the humor and the acting are definitely the two strongest points of this movie.
Yeah, I think it's kind of hard at some points to really get into his character because he's a straight asshole. He's a grumpy old man, and I felt so the story is trying to portray him to be this guy that's, really by the books. He, flips out of for example, when he's in the grocery store and there is a point where he's being charged for rope. And I think they overcharge him for 33 cents and he flips out about it. He's very by the books. He lives in this neighborhood where, he's, wants the gate to be closed and he wants people to park correctly and stuff. And he's really particular about his driveway when it snows. He shovels the snow and makes it really nice and neat. So he's really by the books and he's really, he's organized, but at the same time, he's rude to everybody. He's rude to his neighbors.
Especially even, there's a scene with an animal where he doesn't really have much compassion with an animal about halfway through the movie. And, that's something we all can relate with is, animals and compassion. So they definitely played his character almost to a fault of overly playing the character.
I agree. And I think also what we really agreed on is when they try to do the tone for this movie, it's very all over the place. There's parts where, in the beginning, where they have all this comedy and we're laughing and we're really kind of getting into the story, but at the same time, he's being this asshole. So you're laughing at him being an asshole to all these people, but at the same time, it kind of switches to darker tones at points. And I think that if you're going to go that direction, then keep it with that direction. But it also goes to a lot of different flashbacks too, which I didn't really understand why they kept going to these flashbacks. They would go to these darker parts, and when they went to the darker parts, they wouldn't stay with it. And then they would switch to another tone, and you described it as like a whiplash because they kept just drastically changing these tones for no reason.
Yeah, so this is definitely a movie that I felt like I was riding a roller coaster where you would go from a comedy scene to a very dark scene to a comedy scene again. There's a lot of back and forth tones that really do switch quite often in a very fast pace of time. Unfortunately, the darker scenes can be overplayed too much to the point of they really, quite frankly, lose their seriousness. And there's even one particular scene where it's very dark, and then 2 minutes later, it switches to a lighter scene and then jumps right back to a dark scene over. So, as far as negatives start, I feel like this movie had a good heart and it had a good thought, but unfortunately, the scenes are switching so much you don't even feel the full effects of a scene before it jumps right into another scene. So that inconsistency, unfortunately, was a structural problem that really took away from this movie.
Yeah, and then we mentioned about the music. There's one part where they play this really sappy music, and I turned to you and I said, oh my God, do we really have this song right now? I just felt like a lot of times when they were trying to go for the emotional moments, I don't really feel like they really executed them to the fullest, mainly because what we were just talking about, the tonal problem. Going from the comedy back to the dark scenes, it's just, it's just too much. I just don't think that's executed to the fullest, and that's where this movie, it just doesn't line up to me. I think you didn't like it as much as I did. I would say I'm more so in the mixed bag. I think it's an okay movie. I don't think it's the worst of the year for me, or it's going to be on a worst of the year list, but I think it's an okay watch. But I think that if people are wanting to expect to pay a full price for this movie,
Right.
I wouldn't. I would either do a matinee showing or I would watch it on streaming. I just don't think it's a movie that you really have to rush out to the theater unless maybe you're like
Right.
a big, Tom Hanks fan or something like that.
And the other problem too is, with Tom Hanks and the character they developed, they overplayed the character and overplayed his grump and, kind of asshole-ish behavior to a point that you really couldn't even root for him at all. It got to the point where you couldn't even really feel the impacts. And then the events that lead up to him changing are not what you think that they would be. There's certain events that happen throughout the movie where the turnaround comes almost so late that you've honestly lost a lot of interest because they built him up to be this particularly grump character. And the one thing that actually makes him change really kind of felt scattered off to the left and didn't even really have a lot to do with certain parts of the movie with different events.
Right, and that goes into, talking about the runtime for this movie. This movie, entirely too long, guys. 2 hours and 6 minutes. I think you could have shaved off, at the least, maybe 20 minutes, maybe? I know it's a book, and I understand it's a longer book and stuff, but I think there is a point in this film where I felt a little bit kind of tired of the same kind of things that we were getting. It felt like at certain points where, what were we just talking about with the change of the tones, where they kept kind of doing it over and over, and we're like, we get it, just get to the point.
And I think that leads into the flashbacks. This movie has a lot of flashbacks. Yeah. And unfortunately, this movie takes so long to get to the point of what happened in these flashbacks that by the time it gets there, you feel quite honestly worn out by this movie. That's where this runtime comes in, because this movie definitely could have been shortened by 30, maybe possibly 45 minutes to a degree. And I just feel like that when you take that long to get to the point, it really is going to drag you away from the movie. And unfortunately, as good as the acting is, some of the side characters, they can be a little too goofy for their own means.
I think they were kind of dumb. I thought they were kind of dumb, especially the one guy that comes up and there was a one part where they take the cat in and he's like, oh yeah, I forgot, I'm allergic to cats. It's like, really?
It's not a very realistic, believable scene with these characters. And it's one of those types of movies where I could see what it wanted to be. Yeah. But it just structurally, it could not get where it wanted to be. Yeah. There was too many structural issues with this movie. It's something that I honestly would say that, if I had to rate it, I'm going to give it a 2. I feel like that the acting was great, the comedy is great, but unfortunately the structural issues, the length really killed it. And in my opinion, if you're wanting to see this movie, this is something you just skip and you wait to stream.
I would agree. Stream. I would give a little bit higher score than him. I would give it a 2.5 out of 5. I think it's an okay movie. It has some comedy that really did make me laugh, which I love to have a little bit of comedy. We don't get a lot of that these days. So I was glad that we had that. But his character was too much of an asshole. And even by the end and, how they're trying to change this man, it was very hard to get on board with that because he's just a straight asshole for the majority of the movie. I don't really see where he has a lot of change. There's slight bits here and there, but I don't think when they start to get to that point, it really is executed to the fullest, I should say. So
and unfortunately, even the events that you think would have made him change, those didn't even really truly lead up to a change. Right. And even the change that he made, I honestly felt like it was marginal. Yeah. It wasn't a dramatic change. And it's unfortunate because this movie it tackles a lot of themes, and it has some themes in it that really are good, but it structurally can't get there. Yeah. And that's unfortunately, that's why I can't give it higher than a 2.
I agree. You have any other thoughts?
No. My final thought is, if you want to see this movie, I would definitely say check it out, but I'd wait to stream this.
Same here. All right. Well, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys on my next review.